Hi, welcome to our Homestead series. We hope this will be of enjoyment and informative. We don't know everything, we don't do everything perfect, but what we do know works for us. In these economic times, people have been talking about a back to the land movement or getting back to a more simple way of life. The transformation from the comforts of city dwelling and our modern way can be a little different going back to the homestead. I won't say complicated, but there are some things some people should know. So I hope you enjoy this series. Thank you for watching.
Okay, a new hobby that I've really been enjoying lately is dyeing wool yarn. This morning I'm going to do a little bit more to match some of the red and green yarn that I made. And I have two skeins here already wound up. I don't have a skein winder, so to do this I wrapped it around the legs of a chair and then tied it in several places so that it wouldn't get tangled. I've put about an inch or two of lukewarm water in my crock pot, and now I'm just going to lay the yarn in. It's a little harder to do with one hand, but I'm just going to gently press it down. This isn't super washable, so I don't want to agitate it because I don't want it to accidentally felt on me. I just want it to start soaking up. Now, one thing when you're dyeing yarn is to add a little bit of vinegar to your soak water. If you're using Kool-Aid, it has citric acid in it, so you don't really have to do that. But if you're using food coloring, you definitely have to mix up your dyes and soak your wool with vinegar, or the colors don't stick as well. Now, I like to add it to my Kool-Aid wool anyway, because it helps the dye to absorb quicker, and there's less of a chance of the dyes getting muddy and running into each other. So I just add just a glug. Yeah, I don't really measure it. If you did, maybe about half a cup, and that would be more than enough. Now I'm going to turn my crock pot onto high and cover it with a lid. Now I'm going to leave it here until it gets hot enough that it starts to steam. You don't want to bring it to a boil, because the boiling could, when it agitates the water, it could cause your wool to felt. But it takes a while to boil in a crock pot anyway, so just keep checking on it every maybe half an hour or so, depending on how hot your crock pot runs. Okay, I'm getting ready to mix up my colors. In this one I have 2 packages of lemon lime, and in this one I have 2 packages of cherry. You can use as many packages as it needs to get the color as deep and dark as you would like. Now I'm going to put a little bit of boiling water in each one. You use boiling water so it'll dissolve really well. Otherwise your yarn would be streaky. And you just need a little bit. Maybe about half a cup. Now I'm going to give it a good stir. Make sure it's all dissolved well. Now, if the color's not as deep as you would like, you can test that by putting a little bit on some paper towel. And if it's not as dark as you would like, then you can add some more packets. For me, this is fine because this is the same that I used on the other wool that I'm trying to match. So now I'm going to let these sit and cool until they're about the same temperature as the yarn in the crock pot. Okay, my yarn is nice and warm now. You can see the steam coming up off of them. I'm not sure if the camera's picking it up or not. And my dye is cool a little bit. You don't want to put something boiling hot in, because again, a quick temperature change can cause the wool yarn to felt. I'm going to start with the green, and I'm just going to pour a little bit in on this side. I'm trying to match the pattern that I did when I made the latch batch yarn. Now the last batch was predominantly red with a little bit of green in it. And I'll start putting the red in on this side. These will blend together a little bit. Trying to minimize that by not moving the yarn around too much. Now as this soaks, the red underneath will mix with some of the green, and in my last batch I found it turned a darker red, which was actually kind of nice. And since I wanted to do it the same way without reducing the amount of dye this time so I could match the other yarn and use them in the same project. Another one that I've done that looked really nice was I did 4 colors, and I used green, orange, blue, and what was the other one? I made a brown using food coloring. And remember, if you try using food coloring, you need to cook with food coloring in vinegar. I'll put some links in the side where you can find more about how to do that. And I put that there, and that's how I got the first variegated yarn that I did. I'm going to put the lid back on and let it sit on low until the yarn has absorbed all the coloring. And you'll be able to gently move the yarn aside, and the water will be crystal clear. And when you're done that, then you can take the lid off, turn the temperature off, and let it sit until it comes back to about room temperature. Okay, my yarn was starting to get a little too hot and the water was just starting to boil, so I've turned it off and taken the lid off to cool it down. And as you can see, the water is clear. The yarn has absorbed all the dye. So I'm just going to leave the lid off and let it cool down on its own until it's room temperature and easy to work with. It's completely cooled down now. So now we need to drain it. I'm just going to very gently pour the extra water out. And then I'm going to take my 2 skeins of yarn. Hopefully they're not tangled up too much. Just lay them into the sink. Now I'm just going to press out the extra water. You don't want to wring it because it'll make your wool felt. If you're using superwash wool, you probably it won't felt, so you could do this in the washing machine on a spin cycle. Run some lukewarm water in the sink with your yarn so you can rinse it off. I usually rinse my wool twice. Make sure if red can run more than any other color, no matter what dye you're using. So you want to just make sure that it's all set, and anything that's going to wash out is done so now and not when you're washing your first project, especially if you're blending it with something that's white. You can add, usually I just use plain water and it works well. You can add a little bit of baby shampoo or unscented wool conditioner if you want to. But that would take extra rinsings because you have to rinse the soap out as well. And you can see that the water is staying clear. There's nothing rinsing out. I'm just going to drain it off. I'm just going to gently press out the extra water. I'm just very gently squeezing out some of the extra water. I'm not wringing it, and I'm not using a lot of force. But the more water you can get out now, the sooner your yarn will dry when you hang it up. Yarn out on a towel, and then roll it up. And then just put some pressure on that. Soak out as much water as you can. Okay. Now your yarn is ready to hang up to dry. I usually hang mine on a clothes hanger and hang it in the shower to dry. If it's a nice day, you can hang it outside in a shady place. Try not to hang it out in the full sun because the sun will bleach color out of anything, not just the yarn, but even your clothes. I know some people will also lay it on top of a fan, or they'll lay it on a screen on top of a fan and turn the fan on, and the cool air blowing through it will help it to dry very quickly. If I'm hanging it up indoors, it probably takes a day to 2 days to dry. If you put it on a fan, a lot of people tell me it only takes an hour. And have fun.